that was my first sighting, and then I don't know how long it was there. I saw a couple of entities, silhouettes of entities, in this thing. I called it the Moon over Malibu. It was a craft, just a spherical craft about 50 feet in diameter that was glowing, and after a while it just sped away. And so I went on with my life thinking, well, that was incredible, but no big deal. 2 weeks later, it was a big deal. 2 weeks later, I woke up. I went to bed one night, and I woke up on a craft. So that was the beginning of 7 or 8 years of what started as abductions. I will use the word abductions at that point because they were very brutal. But as the years went on, things changed, and my contacts included a lot of lessons, a lot of spiritual lessons, a lot of contact with many different types of ETs. So I ended up writing a book about it. I kept diary entries for those 7 or 8 years, and in 1995 I wrote my first book, Beyond My Wildest Dreams, and then I dropped out. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided to join Facebook. And I joined as Kim Carlsberg with no mention of any of my ET contact or the book, but I was found out right away, and I started getting all of these wonderful emails from people who had read my first book. And I said, okay, it's me. And I decided to do my newest book, which I'd actually started on the last page of my first book in 1995 as an invitation to people who had had contact. If they had art and they wanted to send me a short story and a piece of art, I wanted to do a compilation book. My first book was illustrated, Beyond My Wildest Dreams, and people really liked the layout of the book and they liked the visuals, so I wanted to do a compilation book. Well, because I dropped out, I didn't do that. And then a year and a half ago when I went on Facebook, everybody was right there, and I said, okay, now's the time to finish The Art of Close Encounters. So I've been working on that nonstop for a year and a half, and I finally got the book in my hands over the holidays, and it's a phenomenal piece of work, I have to say. It's every piece of the work. You know, the art is 4-color art on black pages. It's 350 pages, hardcover, and you know, I tell people I think I really had to wait 15 years for this book because the artwork is so stunning. You know, with the software that we have today, anybody with any artistic skills can put together a beautiful image. And so here I sit with my new book.
Great. It's like birthing a baby almost. It's you know, I always tell people writing the book was the easy part. You know, the hard part is getting, you know, it all put together and the getting a publisher or getting it just put in print and then getting it out there. You know, that's the tough part. Going back to the beginning. So these first experiences that you had, you know, they start off as they seem to always do with the sighting off in the distance, and then it seems like the next phase is the contact, or depending on which group or abduction or whatever. Can you go into that a little deeper on like what exactly happened? So you woke up on this ship, and the next thing you know, some beings. So could you describe the beings that were standing over you or working with you?
Sure. What happened was I woke up and I was standing in what I thought was an elevator. And I was naked and I was paralyzed, and my nose was pressed against the silver door. And there were bodies behind me, and there were bodies to my left. But since I was paralyzed, I couldn't move to look around. I could barely see out of my left eye one of my first boyfriends. And he was the same way. He was naked and he was paralyzed, and he was completely out of it. He was so dazed and confused. I was conscious, and I was aware of what was happening, even though I couldn't move my body. And I was receiving telepathic messages for the first time, and I knew that there was a woman standing next to him, and I knew that she was a makeup artist. And this is an important part of my story, a really important part. So I stood there, and the doors opened, and I was pushed into a huge room, and it had hundreds of tables that were a couple feet off the floor. There were people on all of these tables. all of the tables, all the people were unconscious, and I thought they were dead, actually. I had no idea what was going on. And I saw all these little creatures running around, these little skinny white creatures, and I coined them the anorexic Pillsbury Doughboys. Uh-huh. And there were 2 or 3 of them per human being. There'd be one at the person's head, doing something with the head, and one at the wrist, and a lot of other body parts were being examined. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh my God, these people are dead. I don't know what these creatures are, but I'm going to be next. And so I started screaming at the top of my lungs. And off on my right, I saw 2 taller, we know they're grays now, but back in '88, I'd never heard of a gray or alien abduction. And so there were 2 taller grays. One walked up and slapped me on the back of the neck, and the other one walked up and just stared at me, just a few inches from my face, waiting for me to collapse, because the one that slapped me on the back of the neck had injected something into me. I've had a lot of surgery, so I know what anesthesia feels like, and that was exactly the feeling. So I went unconscious. I woke up later, and I was in a small room, a small dark room with one of the grays sitting off to the side. I knew that whatever they had done to me, that my time was over there, and I could tell that this creature was just waiting for instructions what to do with me next. And there was an arched doorway, and a being walked into this arched doorway, and the room behind the doorway was very, very brightly lit, and the room I was in was dark. So it was almost a silhouette. I could see her features, but what stood out the most was she had patchy blonde hair, big blue eyes, small features, and now we know that that was a hybrid. And when I realized it was a female being, I cried out to her and I said, please help me, you're a woman, can't you see how afraid I am? And she looked at me with this cold attitude and telepathically sent me a message, why don't you stop being such a big baby, and this will be over with soon enough. And I thought, well, what does that mean, over with soon enough? They are going to kill me. And a few seconds later, I was rendered unconscious, and I found myself back in my bed. And that was my first conscious abduction. And then I had a feeling I could make the abduction stop, but I didn't want to right away because I really wanted to find out everything I could about this phenomenon because it was so astonishing. So I went along with it for like 8 years. And then when I had had enough, I did learn how to make it stop and did make it stop. But in the meantime, I realized that the first few years of my contacts were primarily genetic, and they were creating hybrid children with my DNA. So I would be involved in this program, and I would be brought back on the ship to see these children and bond with these children, and so I think that was the primary thing in the beginning. As time went on, I was told I was being prepared for something, and I met different types of beings, and I started getting more spiritual lessons. So, but the thing about the makeup artist I want to come back to is I would say that my book has about 100 entries in it, diary entries. About, 95 of those were conscious experiences. I had a few gaps in my memory of a couple of experiences, and it was driving me crazy. So I decided to go under hypnosis with Yvonne Smith, just 3 or 4 sessions, just to try to, fill in those little pieces. When I did, it was very healing, very helpful. I was invited to speak at MUFON in Los Angeles a couple of times. One of the times, I was on a panel with other contactees that Yvonne Smith had worked with. I was already at MUFON. I saw Yvonne walk in the door, and she had a woman with her. And she ran up to me and she said, listen, when this is over, don't run out of here right away because there's someone here I want you to meet. And I'm looking at this woman who's standing next to her, and she's
the makeup artist. Was she the makeup artist?
She was the makeup artist. But I missed part of the story. And I'm going to fill this in real quickly because it's very important.
Okay.
So in this first regression with Yvonne, I realized I found myself on a table and I was being implanted with an alien fetus. And it was so traumatic that it was beyond reality. And over to my left shoulder, there's a woman standing with dark hair, gripping a single red rose, who looked more disturbed than I felt, and I felt completely lost. And so I thought, isn't that this is just such a macabre picture? So when I came out of it, I wrote all this stuff down, and it turned out that that was the woman who was the makeup artist. Yvonne told me, this woman, when she introduced me to this woman, she said, this woman started coming to me a couple of months after you started coming to me and told me the same story you told me, but a different point of view. When she was abducted, she was made to watch. So I suspect that the alien's consciousness, the Greys at that point, probably figured an icon for love in human society is a red rose. Mm-hmm. So I guessed that they probably were trying to comfort me, however you could be comforted in that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Probably take a little more than a rose for me. It's like...
yeah.
But, it's quite interesting how the synchronicities all come together, and especially when you have somebody that's actually compiling data or working with a lot of different abductees and things. They seem to corroborate each other's story and give details. And, to me, there's no way, this could be some sleep-induced state or whatever. How I keep getting these emails where some new scientist has figured it out that, none of this is real and it's just a chemical thing in the brain or whatever, And,
you're right.
I go, how can they, with all this evidence, with John Mack's work and all these other people, with all of this evidence and detailed information, how could everybody come up with the same details and information, not knowing each other, even countries that aren't even exposed to TV or anything are having the same scenario.
Sure.
So it's right. I was just up in this place, Alta Vista, and they have these rock carvings and petroglyphs all over the rocks, and I swear this one petroglyph looked just like a Grey. His head, so I took a photograph of it, and I was going, this is interesting. Why would they be, doing a rock carving of a Grey? And I don't know how old these carvings are. They didn't have a date there. They had a little paper right up on them, but they didn't really say the date. But, they're pretty old. They've been there for quite some time. And so obviously this scenario has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. I think we might have lost, are you with us? I think I lost Kim. Okay, we're trying to get Kim back on the air. We lost her. We're having a little trouble with Skype and the cell phone. Or the ETs are censoring what we're doing. Who knows? But anyway, we'll just continue and hopefully go there. If anybody has any questions you want to call in the meantime till we get her back on, and hang on, feel free to call into the show. It's been really interesting. I'll go back further into that. We did a hike up to these very special kind of power spots here in the area, and it was just amazing, the energy there, and seeing all the old petroglyphs. But it was really interesting. I was reading some of the information about it, how there was a lot of sacrifice supposedly going on in this area, and they were capturing different groups would capture different people, and they would take them up and sever their heads and offer them to the gods. And I had to ask myself, what kind of a God would want a severed head, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever unless it was some,